Salazar.
Here.
Representative Larson.
Here.
Representative Sherwood.
Here.
Representative Stiff.
Here.
Representative Walters.
Here.
Co-Chairman Kinski.
Here.
Chairman Nicholas.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Okay, welcome, everybody. So we've gone through the explanation of the amendments, and now we're ready to dive in and bring a few amendments. Representative Stiff, do you have an amendment?
Mr. Co-Chair,
Go ahead.
what I had understood is you were going to bring a big offer to the table, that we were going to listen, take it, consider it. I don't know that we're ready to start voting on portions. Is that what we're talking about, or are you just going to start laying out what your proposal is?
Yeah, well, the process is we'll bring several amendments, and after each one, we can recess. You can discuss or as you see fit, and then.
And we're just not in a position to do that, Mr. Chair. We need to see the whole package and then have time to consider it. I think to roll, what I'd understood, what you said yesterday is you're going to bring a big offer on the big things, and to start rolling through these things serially is just, it won't work unless we can understand what the whole offer is. Can't you just articulate to us what it is you have in mind, and then we can consider that?
So, absolutely. So what we'll do, we'll bring 8 amendments, and we'll just go through all of our amendments as a combined offer on the 8 amendments. We'll provide you the information, and then we'll take a recess, and if we need to come back tomorrow, or however you want to do it, we'll just go from there.
Okay, so we're not going to serially vote on them today. We'll just lay them out.
Yep.
Okay, that works. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I would move that the Joint Conference Committee adopt the House position on items 93, 94, 95, and 96.
Don, why don't you have copies of our motions then printed out for them to facilitate it for them?
And, Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
if I can get a second, I can explain the motion.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is essentially the state capitol construction and also the Veterans Home in Buffalo, essentially. So if you'll look on, so item 93 included capital construction for the Riverton State Office Building. It includes the reversion of $10.3 million from the Jackson Outreach Center. Then we have items 94. That's the Stolt Hall demolition. Items 95, Gillette Community College. And then, of course, item 96 is the $69 million for the dilapidated Veterans Home in Buffalo. So these projects cover projects that this is the State Building Commission, the Chief Executive, and the Joint Appropriations Committee approved these capital construction projects. Each of the agencies, the projects, they would occur in Fremont County, Johnson County, Sheridan County, Campbell County, Teton County, Laramie County, Washakie County, Converse County, and Platte County. So broadly across the state, it's $69 million of general funds, $55.8 million in federal funds, $63.5 million of SIPA, 7.1 of other funds, and 33.3 of private funds. For example, the Gillette Community College, that's just an authorization for the money to be spent, not the state spending the money, for a total of $228.8 million.
So any questions on the amendment? Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, can you go over those numbers again? That was really fast.
Mr. Chairman, sure. In terms of the general fund outlay, it's $69 million, which I believe is the Veterans Home. Then we have $55.8 million in federal funds. $63.5 million is out of SIPA, the Strategic Investments Projects account. 7.1 million of other funds, and 33.3 of private funds. And the private funds, again, I believe relate to Gillette Community College. Because it doesn't, the community college in Gillette is not yet levying the full 4 mills, and because of that, it's not eligible for state aid.
And Representative Stiff, how does this compare to an easier place to find it is to go to the Capcom bill that was.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. This is essentially the capital construction bill with a couple of changes. So for example, each of these projects is associated with a separate state agency. There are no projects in this, in the House position, there are no projects that were unrelated to a state agency. So whereas in the capital construction bill, I believe we had at least one project in Fremont County that was not directly tied to a state agency.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Co-Chair, Representative Stith, what we have here on lines 93 through 96, there's a series of recaps of notes that are in the budget bill. Do you propose any change to any of those notes, or exactly as it's written in the budget bill that came from the House? No change to those?
Mr. Chairman, presented just the House position without change.
Mr. Chairman,
Please, go ahead.
so we might want to note on item 96 that the language would change and add a footnote that noting that any federal funds for the reimbursement of the general fund expenditure on the veterans home revert to the general fund.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time, Representative Larson?
Any federal funds for the reimbursement of the 69 million that is for the building of the domiciliary would go to the general fund.
Thank you.
I take it that's a friendly amendment to the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay, discussion on the amendment. Everyone understand what the amendment is?
Okay, next.
Go ahead. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to delete items 107, which relate to Senate third reading amendment 35.1, and delete item 108, which is related to Senate third reading number 35.02. And what this does is this brings back all of the school capital construction back to the point of what it was when it left the Joint Appropriations Committee. And I can give you more details, but we know the Joint Appropriations Committee where we were when we left here with that.
So what are the communities impacted by this?
Communities impacted, Mr. Chairman, include Campbell County, Laramie County, Sweetwater County, Niobrara County, Goshen County, and Teton County.
And do we have an estimate dollar amount?
Estimated dollar amount is $110 million.
So any questions about what this amendment is?
Okay. Bob, thank you for that. Appreciate that. All right, next.
Yep,
Mr. Chairman,
please.
I'd like to make a motion to delete the Senate Amendment 109, which is regarding Senate third reading 36, item 129, which is third reading 54, Senate third reading 54, item 130, which is Senate third reading 55, and 131, which is Senate third reading Amendment 56.
Could you, I'm sorry, Representative Larson, just repeat them.
I will.
109.
109, 29, 129, 129, 130, and 131. 109 is, these are amendments regarding, first, the LSRA backstop to the school foundation program, and then it deletes the statutory spending policy for the 1% severance tax, which is about 108 million.
Mr. Co-Chair, so that would be, 109 is the OPSTA?
109, Mr. Chairman, is the OPSTA.
Okay,
Okay, and then 129 is the, let me find that for you. Is the spending policy.
spending policy.
130 is the shifting of SIPA to the general fund, and then shifting it back, and then the 131 is the LSRA backstop to the school foundation.
Okay,
And do we know the amount of funds affected in this?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think you'd see a change in 108 million in the OPSTA, which is moving funds from where we had them designated in that in that Senate file bill to, and then the spending policy could change up to 190 million of funds available for spending. On the SIPA account, that's moving 175 million from that's currently in the SIPA over to the general fund for expenditure. 9 million of that becomes stranded. That was what the Joint Appropriations Committee appropriated to the community college for matching funds. That now is no longer available.
Okay, everyone understand the amendment?
Mr. Co-Chair,
Please.
Representative Larson, 9 million is stranded. Go back on that with me again. I know the CapCon bill that would have reeled that in is gone. What's the 9 million stranded again?
The 9 million, you'll recall that we had 9 million or $10 million in the CapCon bill that was for the Jackson project that then comes back into SIPA. That's unobligated, and so it stayed there, and we were going to, in JC, we appropriated that for matching funds for the community colleges. That's no longer available.
And so, Mr. Co-Chair, so the amendment failed to sweep that $9 million?
That's my understanding, is that being accurate? It doesn't sweep it to the general fund. It does sweep it to the general fund. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, Senator Kinski, it would sweep it to the general fund. It would not reappropriate it for the community college matching
Correct.
funds.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then 131 is the LISRA backstop.
Correct.
Did you have some dollars you attached to that?
No, that would depend on, of course, year to year. That would just be a swag.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to delete item 69. This is Senate third reading amendment number 12, which requires UW to submit a detailed budget rather than appropriating through the block grant process. And if I get a second, I will explain.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in 1990, the legislature consolidated UW's budget request into what we know today as the block grant model. And the university's process is no different than our community colleges and our K-12 schools that are on the state aid block grant model. But to ensure transparency with the public, you can find the president's budget, the trustees' approved final budget, budgetary procedures, annual reports documenting the institution's objectives, an independent auditor's report, and financial statements. These are all published online on the university's website. And this morning I did a quick Google and looked through them, and they were quite easy to find. And so I don't think that this amendment is necessary. Thank you.
Okay, everyone understand that amendment?
I do, and Mr. Co-Chair, I have a note here, and I don't know if staff has yet completed the research. Representative Nicholas, discussion on how this may impact federal grants. And staff was going to, I think Mike Smith was going to do some research. So that's still pending, isn't it?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that relates to the gender studies and diversity, equity, and inclusion, not the block grant. And UW staff did provide a response to both of those.
Oh, I see. I was looking at 69 rather than 70. All right,
Yes.
thank you. Okay,
Okay, motion number 5,
Mr. Chairman,
please.
I would make a motion to delete items 70 and 71. And this is in regards to gender studies and diversity, equity, inclusion. If I get a second, I will explain. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these are significant administrative decisions that require thoughtful understanding of their implications to our university. As it stands, the concepts are unvetted without the opportunity for public testimony, so I do not believe they belong in the budget bill. Thank you.
And so we did receive a report on this amendment in terms of the impact of that particular language. Don, is that correct?
is your mic on?
It is, I'm just not close to it.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct, and the response I received from the university on item number 70, which is the gender studies program, it would not have any impact on federal funds, in their opinion. On item number 71, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, elimination of the office would not have any impact on federal funds. However, the footnote also says the university shall not expend funds on any diversity, equity, and inclusion activity or function. And they did express concerns about many of their federal funds being at risk because those federal research projects typically cast a wide net and require recipients to encourage participation from diverse populations.
Don, did we get any indication of the amount of federal funds that may be in jeopardy?
I was led to believe it was a majority of their research grants, but I did not get a number, no.
So do we know how much their typical research grants are?
Mr. Chairman, I believe their total federal funds are in the neighborhood of $120 million per year.
Per year? Okay. Go ahead.
Don, with that explanation, if I could follow with a question, so as we look at diverse populations, that could be by race, not just by gender or sex, so it could be, and that's my question, so it could be prohibiting including Native Americans or other populations or religious groups as they go out to look at diversification and inclusion. Would I be accurate or inaccurate in coming to that conclusion?
Yes, I think that's. Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I think that is correct. And that's why I point to the language, not the beginning part, which says, no, it says no funds from this appropriation shall be expended on the office of the university, diversity, equity, and inclusion at the University of Wyoming. The next phrase says, or any diversity, equity, and inclusion program, activity, or function. And I think that was the language that led the university staff to raise concerns over their federal fund applications.
Thank you.
So just so that I'm clear as well, I want to make sure that's on 70 and 71. And is it, I assume this response from UW is in my inbox probably.
Mr. Chairman, it is.
Okay. That inbox requires a lot of work, I can tell you that. We'll get to it. What the concern is, I'm going to rephrase as I understood it. The concern is on the last part of the last sentence, or on any diversity, equity, or inclusion program, activity, or function. The concern is that portion of it may impact on some federal grant conditions that they loop in or include diverse populations, that sort of thing. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is what was relayed to me, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Thank you. My understanding is that even if that last sentence was removed and the footnote only addressed the office itself, we would be in danger of losing some of our programs for our international students in terms of language and helping them make sure that they feel welcome and comfortable on campus and in our communities. So I am concerned about impact of federal monies and that the university would become more dependent on state funds, but I also am concerned about the impact on our international population. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, any other questions about that?
questions? We go, good to move on? All right,
Okay.
6.
Motion number 6.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify. I thought I heard this isn't going to affect federal funding, and now I think I'm hearing it is going to affect federal funding, so I'd kind of like that cleared up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Don, you want to just summarize again?
Mr. Chairman, my request to the university applied to 2 different footnotes. Item number 70, which is the gender studies program, and the response I received was it would not, that amendment would not impact federal funds. May impact, preferences or desires to offer that program. It would, the response I received was that amendment would not impact federal funds. The next amendment, item number 71, Senate third reading amendment number 14, which is the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, that does have language in it that would impair the ability for the university to attract federal research dollars.
So, Mr. Co-Chair, if I may, to recap, what I heard on 71 is that, and we'll get the letter, UW said it wouldn't have any impact on the federal funds per se, but the last portion would impact grants, potentially grants, because they require diversity and so forth. And then I heard Representative Sherwood say, notwithstanding that, she's concerned about the integration of international students onto the campus, which depends on the DEI office. And I think that's a fair recap of what I heard. Is that right? Representative Sherwood? Yes, thank you. Okay. All right.
Okay, Representative Stepp.
Mr. Chairman, I move to delete item 121, that's Senate third reading amendment 46. Item 123, which was Senate third reading 48, and item 125, Senate third reading 53. So these deal with enterprise.
Hang on a second, let me get there. Sorry. Okay, I'm back.
Mr. Chairman, these deal with 3 different areas: enterprise inflation, employee compensation, and the reduction of employees by 42 full-time equivalents. Taking those in turn, on enterprise inflation, the governor had initially requested $48.1 million of general funds for enterprise inflation, and the Joint Appropriations Committee had reduced that by about 40% to $28 million. And as you may recall, the rationale for that was this $28 million was inflationary effects that have already occurred, not projected inflation. And that included, for example, automatic increases in leases of buildings that the state leases from private parties. So those are sort of contractual obligations. It also included other sort of baked-in inflation aspects. On employee compensation, the governor had requested effectively $72 million on a biennial basis for so-called phase 3 of employee compensation, but only for the second year of the biennium, so it was just $36 million, but that would have biennialized, under the governor's recommendation, would have biennialized into $73 million going forward. What the Joint Appropriations Committee did was cut the governor's request by 75% to $18 million, commencing July 1, but that would be the fixed amount for the biennium. And then on the FTE reduction, I think there may have been a miscommunication, or at least a different view of the data between the 2 houses. The JAC's budget as presented added a net 50 full-time equivalent positions on a net basis after taking account for some of the positions that have been reduced. And I heard yesterday the co-chairman talk about 77 positions. In any event, as we see it, the budget as presented had 50 additional positions. Taking 42 of them away really, without, is a, more than an 80% reduction of the potential increases. For historical context, the budget as presented had 400 fewer employees, full-time equivalents, than we did 10 years ago. So just for context. So that's the motion.
Okay,
Everyone understand the motion?
I think we're good.
Okay. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to delete item 45. This is in relation to Senate third reading number 50.1. And I move to delete item 46, which is in relation to Senate third reading number 50.2. And Mr. Chairman, what these are is this is the funding of the Board of Control and whatnot out of Water One versus general funds. As you remember, the Joint Appropriations Committee stuck with the practice of recent practice and for the last several years, several biennia, of funding the Board of Control and associated units out of Water One, and then the JAC went into the Section 300 and added back a like amount of money so that Water One had a no net negative effect, and that was the position of the Joint Appropriations Committee, and so this motion takes it back to that position of the Joint Appropriations Committee.
Okay, everyone understand that one? Okay, our last motion, please.
That's 45, 46. Okay,
Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we delete item 112, which is third reading amendment 41 regarding energy and infrastructure large project matching funds. If I get a second, I'll explain my, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So under the amendment,
was it 112?
it is, Mr. Co-Chairman. Item 112, we had the large energy project, which the JAC give the governor access to $200 million from the LSRA to participate in a large energy project, which would, and we define that as a project that would require the state's participation of $50 million or larger. We have heard conversation about the original intent of this was really designed to pursue the hydrogen hub, but since then the Department of Energy has continued to provide opportunities for energy, supporting our traditional energy industries. Most recently, our neighbors to the state, to the north of us in North Dakota, entered into agreement with the Department of Energy on the carbon sequestration that would have fit this, and we also think that that opportunity, an additional opportunity in those similar to that will arise that we would like to be able to participate in to further protect our traditional fossil fuel industries. The next thing that this amendment did is it deleted going back to large energy projects, in that language deleted this program in its entirety, not just the funding, but the program in its entirety. On the infrastructure projects, you'll recall that we put money in there a couple of years ago as the federal IIJA program come out, which was designed to help states and locals, counties, cities, and towns invest in and improve their infrastructure. But that came with an understanding through Treasury guidance that there would be a match requirement to get the federal funds. We recognized at that time that many of our local entities, our towns and counties, perhaps wouldn't have the capacity or the resources to have those matching funds. And so we put money in there so that when our locals made an application to get the IIJA funding, they could qualify for the matching funds through this program. We take that money away. That's about $69 million. Of that, you'll recall, we had an opportunity through the IIJA, or have the opportunity through the IIJA, to really have an infusion of funds into the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund at a lower interest rates with more principal forgiveness to our communities to upgrade and repair their drinking water and sewer projects, which has been a big deal. And we had taken $24 million out of this fund for the state's matching component of that would be taken away, and we would not qualify for those IIJA funds. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, on the energy matching funds, there's, again, you'll recall that we had initially created and put those funds in place to be able to pursue, as our state pursues an enhancement of our traditional fossil fuel energies and diversifies to be an all energy type state with the development of nuclear and others to look at how we can broaden the impact of that. And these funds came in through an appropriation, and then the program has been run through this governor's office, which was then handed down to the Energy Authority, which then crafted rules, and the program requires these on a quarterly basis. They take applications on these funds on a quarterly basis. We heard announcements yesterday on some projects. There is concern, the way the language of the amendment is drafted, that even though these may be committed, the way the amendment's written, that they still may not be able to qualify for those. And there's a known amount of at least $91 million that would be eliminated from that. We heard some conversation yesterday that, well, the funds would be gone, but the program would still exist, which is an accurate statement. And so,
Mr. Co-Chair, just did you say inaccurate or is inaccurate?
it is an accurate
Okay.
statement. Thank you. So that was correct. That would be a better way. Okay. That was correct. And so what we would be telling those entities that we're interested in is, we have a program here, but it has no money. If you apply, we'll take it to the legislature and see if they want to fund it, which becomes very challenging to get participation from the private sector and the federal government. Well, I think the one great example here is the collaboration that's happened between the BWXT. I think that's okay to have that conversation, who is looking at the small micro reactors. They have all the naval, they've been making all the naval reactors and enter into agreement with the state to pursue that. And then our trona industry has also made an application that they want to be participate in that. There's because they need a more reliant source of electricity in some of their more remote areas. And so I think these energy matching funds have been a wonderful opportunity for the state to not just to look broadly on what that energy industry could be in the state of Wyoming. And I think this amendment pretty well deletes that ability or opportunity moving forward.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, the total affected funds is how much?
It's about 360 million, but if you, there's a reasonable argument that really could be about closer to 400 million, depending on how you read the amendment, and if some of those that are already obligated, those funds are not released.
And then what would be the matching components of those?
We've been averaging, the Energy Authority has been getting at least 3 to 1 on those, and some more.
Okay, does everyone understand about?
I did have a clarifying question for Representative Larson, and thank you for that. That was very thorough. I thought I heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that without these IIJA match funds, people would not qualify. And they would qualify, they just would have to apply for the match, and it would go to the legislature as an appropriation, or the private sector has the match, or the local government has the match. You can get the grant, and then you just have to come up with the match. You don't have to have the match to qualify, or do you have to have the match to prove that you can qualify to the feds first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. I think that you are correct that the U.S. Treasury or whoever is administrating the IIJA funds are not prejudiced as to where those matching funds come from. We put these funds in place because we were of the opinion, and I think for the most part still are, that our local communities, for example, if they're trying to improve water or some other infrastructure, may not have the resources that equals the match. Now, when you submit, as I understand it, as you submit your application to the IIJA, you have to verify that you've got the local match committed.
Okay.
Did I answer?
I think you answered the question, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's the same thing as when you go to the SLIB, you have a match and you've got to show them there's a reasonable prospect that you can get that. Don, I just wanted to clarify, section 321 is the matching energy grant program. 323 is the large energy project.
Mr. Chairman, yes, but from different years, so you're kind of commingling years. 321 is historic language.
Right, matching energy projects.
Right. 323 is new language.
Which is large energy projects. So it's MEP and LEP, I got that. And then 325 is IIJA.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct, and that is also old language, meaning it's section 325 from prior legislation, not this year's legislation.
Okay. Matching energy program is old language. Large energy project is new. IIJA is old, okay?
So, Mr. Co-Chair, those are our motions.
Okay, we'd like to just take a couple minutes to caucus, visit a little bit, if that's all right?
You bet. We'll do the same.
We do. You may have, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. We do have two folks missing. You may have noticed before the break that Senator Salazar had to take off for a family obligation. And Senator McEwen he's actively running a business back home while he's here, and he just had to take his leave. I want to thank you. Thank you for what you've done. You've given us, you said you were going to come in with something big, and you did. And there's certainly a lot there for us to consider, and we will give it due consideration and see what we can come back to you with. But I appreciate all the thought and the work that you put into putting that on the table, and now the ball's in our court to come back to you with something. So greatly appreciate it, Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Co-Chair, do you have a preference for scheduling a time for tomorrow?
You know, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but if it can, let me get a hold of you, but I don't see it happening tomorrow.
Okay.
To really do it right, well, I think what you told me was it's better that we take our time and get it right than that we hurry. And that was good advice, I think. So that's kind of where we are. But I'll let you know if we can regroup tomorrow, Mr. Co-Chair.
Okay, sounds good. So with that, committee will stand adjourned until further notice.